Fundi has invited Ephraim from the FSCA to tell us about money management matters. Now, as you know, Fundi is in the business of assisting our clients achieve their educational goals. And these unpredictable times of COVID have made us rethink how we can help you, our client, achieve these goals. And we thought it best to bring on an industry expert to teach you about money matters, because we are your lifelong learning partners who want to see you thrive, not only in your education, but also in your financial space. Please help me in welcoming Ephraim from the FSCA to tell us more about money matters. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Money Management session. My name is Ephraim Khosana, and I'm from the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, and we are bringing you this Money Management session in partnership with Fundi. Today, we are going to be talking about money management. What is it that we are talking about when we are talking about money management? Firstly, I will talk about the FSCA. Who we are as the FSCA. The Financial Sector Conduct Authority, it was established on the 1st of April 2018. It is established in terms of the Financial Sector Regulation Act of Act number 9 of 2017. And as the FSCA, we are the market conduct regulator for the South African financial sector. We regulate all the financial services and financial products that have been offered here in South Africa. And we are mandated to ensure that financial customers are treated fairly and financial markets operate with efficiency and integrity. Most importantly, as the FSCA, we provide financial education programs and we promote financial literacy. And in today's session, this will be the areas, the topics that we are going to cover. Firstly, we are going to look at money management itself. We'll talk about what is budgeting, the difference between the needs and the wants, drawing up a budget, how do you go about drawing a budget, how do you track your expenses, and how do you stick to your budget. So those will be the areas that we are going to cover in this session today. Firstly, let us look at money management. Money management is all about personal financial management skills. What skills do you have? What skills do you need to possess in order for you to be able to manage your money wisely? We are talking here about earning money. Is there anything that you need to do in order to earn your money? What about saving? Is it important for one to save? Budgeting. Do we know how to draw up a budget? Do we do budgeting? And spending your money wisely, it's also part of your financial management skills. Issues of investing. Have you ever thought of investments? Credit and debt management, as well as retirement planning. So all this, they are packaged together as part of your personal financial management skills. Importantly is the issue of saving. Why do you need to save? When to save? What to save and where to save? Those are the questions that one should ask yourself. For you to be able to manage your finances in a proper way, you need to always think about saving. Why do you have to save money? When it's appropriate time for you to save, what to save, and where to save? Those are the questions that one should be asking yourself. And in this presentation, we'll be covering all those areas. So let's look at why you need to save. Firstly, there are future expenses, unexpected expenses that comes. So if you save money today, whenever those expenses in future arises, you have some little savings that you have that you can be able to cover those expenses. What about unexpected emergencies such as medical? Maybe there's an accident, or maybe there's fire in the house and then your children get burnt. So when you have your savings, it helps you to be able to cover those unexpected emergencies, such as even a funeral itself. Sometimes a funeral comes unexpectedly. Are you covered for it? Have you prepared for it? Do you have something that you'll be able to use should an incident like this happen? Another reason why we need to save is for future security. For an example, buying and owning your own house, looking at issues of retirement, or even starting your own business. So you can be able to start saving now for your future securities so that you can be able to start that business that you've been so much desiring, or even starting to build your own house, or even looking at retirement in the future. What about the education for yourself or even for your children? For we know that today education is so expensive. So it is important that you start saving now so that by the time your children grow up and they need to be going to tertiary education, you have your savings available so that you cannot be troubled by any issues, but you are able to take your children through tertiary education as a result of your savings. Let us look at budget. What is it what we're talking about budgeting? Budget is it's simply a list of your income and your expenses. So you have on one side your income, and on the other side you have your expenses. It acts as a roadmap for where your hard-earned money will go every month. For an example, it will show you exactly how much your real earnings and your real expenses are, and where are you spending your money. It will help you understand how are you spending your money. You will be able to know how do you track your money. So let us look at the elements of budgeting. So before you even go into budgeting, you need to understand your spending patterns. You need to make a difference between your needs and your wants. What are the needs? What are those necessities that you cannot live without? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the needs. Whereas when you're looking at the wants, are things that we can do without. What are the examples of needs? Examples for needs are like your water. We cannot live without water. We cannot live without shelter. We need education as a necessity. We need food. And here I'm talking about basic food. We need medicine. We need transport itself. We need electricity. So fuel comes as a form of electricity. Those are our basic needs. Those are the things that you cannot live without. On the contrary, you have your wants. Your wants are things that you can live without. What are the examples of wants? Like your takeaways, those takeaway food, like your burgers, your chips, and so forth and so on. Expensive clothes, luxury food, television that you can live without. Sometimes others go even to get to a point where they even budget for cigarettes. And is that a need or is it a want? So those are some of the examples of your needs and your wants. So even as you are to spend your money, you need to understand and you need to tell yourself, is it a need or is it a want? Is it something that I can live with, or is it something that I cannot live without? In creating your budget, it is important that you follow a few steps. Firstly, step number 1, you need to make a list of all your income. You remember we talked about you on one side, creating all the incomes that you have. It might be the incomes from your job or from that extra hustle that you have. And then you list them on one side. Step number 2, make a list of all your expenses. And here we are talking about all your expenses. It doesn't matter whether it's your expense on an airtime that is maybe 29 rands or so, but that on itself is an expense. So you need to list all your expenses on the other side. Step number 3, you need to review your financial goals. You need to know that what is it that I'm going to spend on in that particular month. For an example, you have your salary coming, you have your income coming. So already you are drawing up a budget to say, when I receive my salary, when I receive my income, these are the goals, these are the things that I'm going to achieve in that particular month. These are the goals that I'm going to do in that month. So you are able to review your financial goals and say, okay, this is according to priority. I'm going to settle this and this and this and this as per your goals that you have set for yourself in that month. Then step number 4, you need to add up all your expenses. You put all your expenses together, whether be airtime or be rentals that you're paying or electricity, or it might be food in the house, including transport itself. So you list up all your expenses and then you add them up together. Step number 5, you need to subtract all your expenses from your income. You know that this is the total of your income that you have. It might be, for an example, 5,000, and then you list all your expenses, and then you add them together, and then you also have the total amount of all your expenses. You subtract your expenses from the income that you have. And always importantly, you need to remember to identify which of your expenses are a want or are a need. And then if it's a need, it is something that you cannot live without. And then if it is a want, it's something that you can live without. And therefore, you can also prioritize in terms of your needs or your wants. Is it something that you can do without? And then you can park it aside. But if it's something that you cannot live without, then you put it in your budget. Let's go more into drawing up a budget. Here we have an example of Mr. Shabalala. He's putting together his own family budget. And then on the one side, you have what we call the fixed cost. So your budgeting template will have your fixed cost, and it will have what we call a variable cost. What are the fixed costs, for an example? A fixed cost, it includes those that you actually pay each and every month. Those are the expenses that come each and every month. For an example, your rent, your insurance, your school fees, your food, and then your car repayment. You know that each and every month you have to pay these ones because it is the fixed cost that you have. So you line them up, you put them aside, and then you put a total amount on your cost fees, no fixed cost. And then on the other side, you have what we call the changing or the variable costs. These are examples of variable costs. It might include electricity and water. Why is it a variable? It's because the expenses there, it's not fixed. It might change every month. So this month you might find that for your electricity and water you are paying 250. But come the next month you might be paying 300 rand or you might be paying 200 rand. So the cost there, they keep changing every month. Also, another example, it's your accounts. The accounts that you have, maybe it might be your clothing account. In this month, the bill might come saying 200 rands, and then in the following month, it can say 250. So in this side of your budgeting, all that you're putting is your changing or your variable costs, your electricity, your accounts, your groceries, because every month your groceries might change. You might find that last month you bought enough milli. So this month you don't need to buy too much milli. So it might reduce or it might even go up. Issues like your petrol or your repairs, your service to your vehicle, it might change, it might vary month to month. You have your cell phone bills as well, which can change on monthly basis. So that are the examples of your variable cost. So you put them together as well, and then you have your total variable cost on one side. And then you add up both your total fixed cost and then you add up your changing or your variable cost together. And then in our example of Mr. Shabalala's family budget, the total cost that they have is 2,710. And then their total income that Mr. Shabalala has, it's 2,400 rands. So the income that Mr. Shabalala has in this scenario, it is like he has little income, but he's got more expenditure. So in the budget, you find that there are these two important things that you need to take note of. As you are putting together your budget, they can either be a variance or it can be a deficit in your budget. You might have more expenses than you have savings in your budget. In the case of Mr. Shabalala here, his income is way lower than the total expenses that he has. So his budget is working on a deficit. He still has to have more money that he has to add into his budget. So the budgeting helps him to be able to know what are his expenses and what is his income that he has. And then he's able to draw up the budget based on what income he has and what expenses that he has. And in this way, it helps you to be easy for you to be able to draw up a budget. You can have on one side your fixed cost, and then you start putting them together, and then you indicate the amounts also in terms of what are the prices in terms of your fixed cost. You add them together. And then on the other side, you have your changing or your variable cost. Then you also list them down, and then you add them together. And as simple as that, you will be having your budget, and then you come to a point where now you look at the total cost versus your total income that you have. And then based on the two, you can be able to see whether at the end of your budget you're having a deficit or you are having some savings. Sometimes you might find that your income is even more, it's bigger than your expenses. And when your income is bigger than your expenses, you have savings. But when your income is lower than your total expenses, that's where you have your deficit. Let us look at how do you track your expenses. It is easy for you to can start tracking your expenses. For an example, you can draw up yourself a monthly calendar where you have all the items that you need to spend on. For an example, your groceries, your household equipment, your transportation, your personal care, where we are talking about all the things that you use for your personal care, and then entertainment and other things that you may also want to add. And then you list them according to how you're spending. For an example, you check whether did you buy groceries in the first week, and then you indicate how much money was spent towards groceries in week number 1. In week number 2, did you go again and buy additional groceries? Week number 3, week number 4, and week number 5. Then as you put all those amounts, you have your total amount at the end of the month. And then that will help you to be able to track your expenses in terms of grocery. You will know how much you are spending in terms of your grocery in that month. The same can go also into transport. You check for the first week, how much amounts did you spend in terms of transportation? Week number 2, you also indicate there that, in this week, this is the amount of money that I spent. Week number 3, week number 4, and week number 5. And then you add up all those amounts, you put them on the total category. The same goes to personal care, entertainment, and many other things, many other expenses that you have. It might be that you are giving money to your children, pocket money to your children. It's also as an expense. So it is important that you know what your money is being spent on. So each and every item, it is important that you list it so that you can be able to see and be able to track that the money that I had, this is where I spent all my money. There are people who will have money, but at the end of the month, they do not know what did they spend the money on. So keeping your calendar like this, it helps you to be able to track your expenses. You can be able to be accountable of each and every money that you spend. As little as items might be maybe your cell phone, your airtime or your data that you're buying, it might be as little as 30 rand, but you need to also track it somewhere. You need to indicate it somewhere that this is what I spend on, and then you put the total category at the end. You add your monthly total expenditure, And then it will help you to be able to see that in actual fact, my money is being spent on 1, 2, 3 things. There are sometimes other people spend a lot of money in some habitual things, some habits. It might be entertainment, it might be, shopping, because other people love going to shopping. So through your template that helps you to be able to track your expenses, you'll be able to can see that most of your money, most of your income is being spent towards this entertainment or towards this shopping. And then in the next month, it helps you to be able to can say, can I reduce on my spending on this item or in this item, and then in that way you'll be able to spend your money wisely. You'll be having good financial management skills. And lastly, how do I stick to my budget? This is very much important, that after you have drawn up your budget, you need to stick to that budget. Firstly, do not spend more than you have planned on spending. That's where the budget comes and helps you. It helps you to be able to identify the areas in which you want to spend your income on. And you do not spend more than you have planned to spend. If it's not on the budget list, if it's not on the list, therefore it's not worth for you to buy. You need to always keep track of your expenses. Even as you are buying, keep track of that expenses. Is it sometimes giving out pocket money, sometimes paying for this petrol or for that petrol? You keep your expenses, you keep track of your expenses. Also, it is important that you update your budget on a monthly basis. You do the actual versus the planned spending. This is the budget that you've drawn for that month, and this is the actual spending that you spent on that month. So you need to be able to update it and check, was I able to keep to my budget as was planned? And most importantly, you need to list expenses by category and not by the place where you made your purchase. For an example, the expenses, if ever it's airtime, it is airtime. It's not about the shop, but it's about the item that you have purchased. And one other thing that will help you to stick to your budget is paying your bills on time. Because remember, when you are drawing your budget will be saying, for my accounts, this is the amount I'm supposed to pay this month. Let's say, for an example, 200 rands. But if ever you are not paying the bills on time, the 200 might have incurred interest. And instead of paying 200 in that month, now you'll be expected to pay an interest, perhaps maybe 250. So it's no longer the 200 that you've actually initially put on your budget, but now you are spending 250. So it's important that you pay your bills on time, so that the actual amount that you've put there, it is the actual amount that you're going to spend in that particular month. You need to also compare your budget with your actual expenses each and every week. This is what I've budgeted for, and this is what I've spent. If ever you're finding that you have been spending on things that you have not budgeted for, that is where now you still have an opportunity to can always review it, to can always talk to yourself to say, no, but I'm going off track from my budget. And then you will recall yourself back to track, and then you make sure that you keep and you stick to your budget that you have drawn. And importantly, it is important for you to adjust your budget where it's necessary. Sometimes some other additional expenses, unforeseen circumstances come, so you are able to be able to adjust your budgeting for that month. Maybe it might happen that there's extramural activities at your child's school, and then in that time it means more petrol, it means you having to do more spending for that particular time. So you go back to your budget and you adjust your budget wherever it is necessary to do that, but always keeping track and always making sure that you keep track of your budget. And that brings us to the end of our session, and right now we'll allow questions and comments from the presentation. Thank you so much.